welcome to the podcast. So excited to have you here. We have a really special episode today. Mark Oman is here with his higher performance generation system. This is a pep talk. This is like some motivation. Mark was actually an educator for 25 years. He's been an entrepreneur for 42 years. And he really utilized a lot of these elements to get more out of his students, and then he's also used it for organizations and for teams of educators to really take it to that next level. So these are amazing tips and strategies that are going to help you. He's going to talk about the science behind it because he was a math and or a physics chemistry teacher. And so him and I get along really well with my chemistry background, but he's going to bring in some of the science behind some of these shifts that you can take in your own life. And you might even want to bring Mark into your organization to help, flip some environmental things, some, overall performance things with your school district. So I really am excited for you to meet Mark. And if you are a higher performer and you know other higher performers out there that want to continually get better, will you do me a favor? Will you share this episode with them? Okay, they may not even be in school communication, but you're going to share this episode and you're going to say, hey, listen to this. This really makes a lot of sense. And Mark shares a really powerful story of how this whole thing got started. You are not going to want to miss that. And getting into really making a difference in your work life, in your stress. He's got some really practical tips today. So before we get into the interview, of course, I've got today's K-12 PR tip. So let's get to that first. Here we go. All right, today's K-12 PR tip is don't be afraid after listening to these episodes to actually take action and reach out to the guests. Okay, I got the coolest call today from Seth. Seth is in Illinois and he just applied for a school communicator role. He is a avid watcher on YouTube. So, hey, Seth, hi, you made my day. And you guys, Seth listened and he actually took action and reached out to Travis Jadell, great school communicator out of Wisconsin, and really started talking to him about his role and then got the courage to apply. And then he picked up the phone and called me and he was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you answered the phone. And I'm like, Seth, of course I answer the phone. And so we had a 20-minute call this morning, but I am just so proud of Seth. He has some of his own limiting beliefs, which Seth, this is going to be an incredible episode for you. But some of his mindset shifts of, I'm too young. No, you're not. Like, you're the perfect age for a school communicator role. My background's in marketing, like not really school communications. Dude, Seth, marketing is what people are looking for. You have a superpower. So I just love that Seth took action. Now, of course, I can't take phone calls from every single one of you. I wish I could. I do one-on-ones in our membership group, and I actually recently launched a way if you're looking for some entrepreneurial guidance or career guidance, I've got a way to do that as well. But just take action and don't be afraid to reach out. If you hear somebody on this podcast and they inspire you or you've got more questions, we leave their contact information for a reason. We want you to be able to reach out. These people want to be able to help you. And so just be like Seth, okay? Don't be afraid to reach out. And certainly with today's episode, don't be afraid to reach out to Mark, but with every episode. So that is my tip for today. Now let's get started. Jump into this interview with Mark Oman. Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Mark Oman. How are you?
Oh, doing great. Good to see you, Andrea.
If you're watching this on YouTube, you guys are going to see that Mark is sporting the best purple polo shirt that I've seen. He's so on brand. Good job, Mark.
Thank you. I wanted to show up. I want to show up today, and I thought purple was the perfect color.
I love it. Well, we've known each other for years. I think I actually sang in your wedding.
You did. Yes, you
Did
did.
and I'd love for you to share your background and the work you do with school leaders.
Yeah. I'll be glad to. Well, to start out with, I'm a 25-year educator, now retired. I spent the last 22 of it teaching eighth grade science, and I loved it. I love my eighth graders. I love teaching science. I love being part of all of that. I have a background in physics and math, and I've also spent 43 years now as an entrepreneur in my life. I've sold everything from worms to landscaping, and I grew up here in Amory, Wisconsin, and I still reside here, which is also where I taught. I am the creator of the higher performance generation system, and I present it to businesses. I do couples talks. I do one-on-one coaching with youth and adults, for that matter, in business and in education. And really enjoy developing people and being part of the school system. And I'm available to come to your school if you happen to be so interested in performing at a higher level with your teachers and with your students.
Yeah. I love this. We got to talk quite a bit about this. I think it was almost a year ago or 2 years ago, a year ago when I was doing my 10-year celebration at my
Yep.
home. You and your beautiful wife Meredith, who is part of my Thursday morning group, who has really pushed me to be a higher performance player, which has been great. But first of all, I just want to go back. Okay, 25 years in education and physics and math and science teacher. So you can see why we get along. I mean, I was a chemistry major. So,
Yep.
we got that math and science type background, but now turning it towards, performance and success and
Yep.
all of that. So tell me a little bit about how this higher performance generation got its start.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's a good story. I'll give you the more brief version of it. So I've been teaching for a long time. I've been an entrepreneur for a long time in my life, and so I had a couple. I had a couple call me up one day, and I've been teaching for 10 or 12 years at this time, and they called me up and they said, will you come over to our house? We want to talk to you, which might sound a little weird as a teacher, but I knew them. I knew them a little bit and said, oh, it's not totally weird. And it must be good, right? And otherwise, why would they do that? So I went over to their house and they proceeded to say, we want to thank you. And I'm like, thank me for what? And they said, we want to thank you for saving our son's life. And I kind of dumbfounded. I what did I do? How did I do that? You're gonna have to enlighten me here on this one. And and so they proceeded to tell me a story. They said our son was in the middle of his suicide, and he interrupted his suicide. And later he told his mom and dad. He told them, Mr. Ullman would have been so disappointed in me if I'd have gone through with this. And I'm like, wow, what did I do? And they went on to say a few things and tell me how that he respected me as his teacher, and I was also his wrestling coach. And he has gone on years later, and now he's got a family, and he actually got an elementary ed degree. And it was, yeah, he loves kids. He didn't want to go through with what he was going through, but what it did was made me think about what I was doing as a teacher. It really made me conscious of what I was doing as a teacher. And what it made me do is go back and reverse engineer this system and say to myself, I'd always kind of taught what I did, but what was I doing differently that really made this young man um, hit that elevated level of I want to make a change in my life. And he was at rock bottom. And so it occurred to me, why do I need to let kids get to rock bottom before they start making changes in their culture, in their life, and in their habits? And so I went back, and I actually started writing down after this event. I started writing down what I did differently, and I wrote down uh, the HPG, the higher performance generation system, on paper, and it really, and so I started teaching it as a level, and I refined at a certain level, and I started refining it so that It was very, very simple. That was one of the two principles, two guiding principles to start out with. It had to be very, very simple, and there had to be something for every kid in there. And there's when you see that, there is something for everyone when you see the system, and it is quite simple. You can make it complex as we can do with our lives, but it is you can grab one piece of it or you can grab the whole thing, and you can have this system that will help you change your life for the better. And so that's the background of the system. It started out with this young man and his parents a few months later telling me this story, and it triggered that piece in me where I need to explore this a little more. And as science background people, we're naturally curious people. We take the time to write things down. We take the time to investigate because of that curiosity. And so I started using it in my classroom, the higher performance generation system. I actually did a study, you'd probably call it an action research study on it. I spent 2 years doing an action research study and had tremendous results in changing individuals and the culture of my classroom. And who benefited the most? It was really me. I benefited the most because I was the one teaching it. Made me a higher performing individual. Just made me a better person as a teacher, as a husband, as a father, as a businessman, and just in general in life. It made a huge difference in my life.
Yeah. So just to go back, and I know like some of the impact that this study that you did over the 2 years, I think
Mhm.
there was dramatic shifts in testing scores and some of those things. And the folks that are listening to this may be more on the communication side, but obviously they serve educators. And I think in today's day and age, even more so than when you were in the classroom, kids are dealing with so much. And being able to teach is one thing, but then just being able to connect with these kids who are going through so much is
Yeah.
another thing. And so that's really, I think, the magic of your system and it being so simple. But can you tell me just a little bit of those anecdotal kind of data points that you were able to see? Because that's what I think is so powerful when you really look at this. I mean, as if your first story wasn't amazing. You saved a student's life, and I know that you saved more than just his life in your time, and you're going to go on to save more. But t tell me a little bit about that.
Certainly. Let me just back up just a touch and just say kids are in survival mode. I mean, we as parents, we as teachers, as spouses, we are in survival mode about 70% of the time from the research. And I think for kids, that number is even higher. And as you imagine, so in survival mode, we often call it fight or flight mode. If you're into brain science, you call it high beta brainwave mode. So any of these, they're all the same. And when we're stuck in there, and we tend to be there 70% of the time, because we've got things going on. Imagine as a student, imagine maybe your worst day or some of your or really a routine day as a student. You're worried about the big game tonight. You're worried about what's going on in the hall. You're worried about comments that people have made. You're worried about your clothes that you're wearing and how your hair looks, and you've got all these things. And when you are in high beta brainwave mode, you cannot process new information. In other words, you can't learn. We're all about learning when it comes to education and not just in education, but in the outside world too. And when you can't learn or process new information, okay, your brain is stuck right where it's at. You're running a program. You're repeating exactly what you did yesterday. We generate as humans 60 to 80,000 thoughts every day. That's almost one per second. You think about how busy our minds are, and so taking the time to learn the higher performance generation system gets you what it does is it gets you to understand how to get kids as well as yourself out of that survival mode. And now there's your increase in learning time. And so we had great results with test scores. I mean, I always taught this, so I always had good test scores. But once I understood it, we got a chance to really make some jumps in test scores that were a surprise to us. Whereas we didn't expect to do that well, and all of a sudden we're doing much better. So that's where as you to use your term, magic. That's where the magic starts coming in. My system is based on the principles of not just neuropsychology. I'm not a psychologist, but I am a physicist. My background is physics and math. And so the principles of physics, more specifically quantum physics, come into play here, and a lot of it's some of the newer sciences that are being developed within physics. So I've combined those two things to make this system work. I told you I reversed engineered it. I went and did it, and then I wrote it down, and then I went and found the science for it. And I found the science for it in a book by a guy named Dr. Joe Dispenza. And the name of that book is Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. That's where I guess largely the science comes from. It comes from a lot of different things, but that was the book that I found that was closest. If you're looking for a good read, that one it was tremendous. It was impactful on my life. So
I'm gonna make sure to link that up in the show notes. So when my listeners certainly are high performers, right? And they
yep,
have stressful jobs. Your
yep,
students also. But now we've kind of talked about this higher performance generation. You've kind of
yep,
got a list of 10 items. Can you just break down maybe one or two of
yeah.
those items for the listeners to kind of give them an idea of what it's all about?
Yeah, absolutely. There's three pillars, and those three pillars are mindset and then relationships, and then a group of them that I call self or self mastery. And then within each of these, there's two lists. There's two lists. One is identifiers of underperformance. And the language is important. No one wants to be an underperformer. They want to be a higher performer. I equate it to no one goes to the dealership to buy a low performance sports car. They go there to buy a high performance sports car. So especially as kids, well, I shouldn't say that. We're all kids, aren't we?
Mhm.
As as people, we look to perform higher. So accepting that in your life that you want to perform higher does amazing things for you, and just in terms of making less stress, getting you out of that survival mode that we talked about. So let me use one thing. So we've got the three pillars that I talked about: mindset, relationships, and self mastery. But now we've got identifiers of underperformance. And I keep this thing simple. As I mentioned, I made it really, really simple. And I really worked over the years to make the language, really bring that language down, that when you just look at a heading or a title, such as negative mindset, the first one I'm talking about here is negative mindset. When you just look at that, you know what that means. You know what that means already. And we're going to turn that into a positive mindset. So I start out ultra simple. The top of my list, number one on both lists, underperformance and higher performance, is negative mindset and positive mindset. So I'm going to take you back to the late 1940s for just a brief moment. Hebbian psychology suggests that nerves in your mind, a little brain psychology here, nerves that fire together wire together. So if you're firing negative thoughts, those thoughts intertwine in your mind, and they're stuck there. We need to prune those. So we got to get rid of the negative mindset. We've got to disconnect those things. But if we don't replace them with something, psychology says that those neurosynaptic connections go back together and rewire as negative. So we're gonna rewire them as positive, and give ourselves a positive mindset. So relentlessly getting rid of the negative self-talk, the negative thoughts, the negative comments toward yourself, especially toward other people, especially too. And then turning that into a positive mindset. You've all encountered maybe a coach or someone that, really works on, we got to believe that we can do this. It's more than that. You have to eliminate the negative portion of that. And if as a teacher, let me give you an example. Kids would come in once in a while and say, I'm going to fail this test. How many teachers, or how many of you said that yourself? And you go in there, if you go in there, you're sort of predicting a little bit what could happen. And saying I'm gonna ace this test doesn't guarantee you're gonna ace that test, but what it does do, it gives you a shot. It gives you a shot to do that, just like in competition. Part of my system, I'll teach kids in athletics to get in the zone. That goes along with your negative mindset, positive mindset situation. Teaching kids to get in the zone is it's actually fairly easy to do. People just don't take the time to do it. They get stuck on practice and practice and practice, and there's nothing wrong with practice. But the mental side of sports, academics is one thing, but sports is also a matter of curiosity for a lot of the people that I coach. So it is a fantastic thing. So there's the simplest example. The second example I can give you, and you can see this has a mirroring. I call it opposite imaging effect. You've got negative to positive. There's 5 of the 10 things on the 2 lists are what I call opposite images. So negative to positive. The second one is also an opposite image. And so the second one on the identifiers of underperformance is excuses mindset. So, how many of you have ever made up an excuse? Oh, we all have. Anybody do it today already? Yeah, I bet there's a few of us. And give yourself some grace too. Being, having characteristics of underperforming, it's in all of us. Give yourself some grace. It doesn't make you a bad person, but we're going to work on changing it, is what we're going to do. Because if you start changing a few students, you start changing the culture. And you mentioned to mention my studies that I did. I had increases of 20. I averaged increases of 20% on all of these characteristics within a year. That was an average. Some of them would hit 30, some were, in the high single digits, things like that. But that was kind of an overall number that, as I looked at that, if you can go 20% and now stacking year after year of teachers teaching this, you could really make a difference in the culture of your school, your classroom, your athletics, all of that. And so, there's the start of the opposite images there, negative to positive. Now, excuses mindset, and when you want the opposite image of that is taking ownership. So we have a thing we work with kids on taking ownership, kids. There's a few pillars that kids really want in their life. One of them is confidence, one of them is respect. Taking ownership gives you that level of respect when you don't come up with the excuses and you take ownership for what's happened, whether it's on the sports field or on the grade that's on the top of your test or your assignment, or in your life. You start taking ownership, and people say, "Wow, that person is going places," and you start that process of getting out of high beta brainwave, out of survival mode, when you start taking responsibility for your own actions. And we have ways of helping kids with that. And when I teach on stage, I tell a lot of stories. I love stories. That's one of the best techniques I used as a teacher to get kids out of that. Many of you remember when your third grade teacher read Old Yeller to you. You still remember what happened to the dog. In case you haven't read the book, I'm not going to spoil it for you. But you remember those things. You remember stories. They're emotional. And so as we start getting kids to have different thoughts in their head, you've got these 60 to 80,000 thoughts going through your head. Well, 90 to 95% of them are the same as the day before. That still leaves you with 4 or 5,000 new thoughts to install in your head every day. So we start doing that. And a new thought, it all starts with a thought. New thought leads to a new choice. New choice, it gives you a new behavior, and a new behavior gives you a new experience. And as you go through this process of getting that new experience and then getting a new emotion, you create a new self. And now imagine having, you know, 5 or 10 or 20% of the kids in your classroom, or your organization
Yeah.
start to perform at a higher level. Imagine what that does to the people around you. Now you've got people pulling people up instead of staying at the same level. And so I had tremendous success as a teacher using something like that.
Yeah, I love so Mark got a chance to come into my organization, Social
Yep.
School for EDU.
Yep.
We have a retreat every year, and Mark was able to come and share with our group of ladies. We all work from home, but we serve these schools. Certainly my group is obviously high performers. We have incredible people on our
Very
team.
much so. I love talking with your organization. You got a tremendous group there.
And so it was really powerful there. And then I've also gotten to see Mark in front of students. So we have a student athletic leadership team. A small group of students come in, and he was able to share some of this with them. And so it was all, I think it was all sophomores and juniors. And you're going to be coming back soon. It was really powerful to see them really thinking through. And I think the magic is in the simplicity that you have. I know that you've told stories where, again, we're not going to give you all 10 of these things because otherwise you're not going to bring in Mark for your organization. But or some coaching or whatever. There's a lot of ways Mark can work with you, but where they actually just put this right on their, mirror to be able to remind themselves of this. And Mark, you spoke about a little bit confidence and respect. So confidence is something that we talk about a lot in this world, okay? Like you got to have more confidence. This is my listeners in their role because sometimes they're just like, okay, I got to go in and be the expert in this and I'm not quite sure we're doing things right. But confidence is so important, but it's like how do you get more confidence? It's like, oh, get more confidence. Well, yeah, like okay, how do we do that? And you really broke it down. It kind of goes back to these 10 things. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, my 10 things on underperformance and higher performance, they're foundational. Confidence is not foundational. Confidence is a little higher up the hierarchy triangle. Some of you in education are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, and confidence is a little higher up there. You don't automatically get that, and as you know, I remember as a coach, telling students, "Oh, be confident. You can beat this guy. His arms are twice your size, and he's a great older, but boy, you can go out there and out wrestle this kid." And you don't automatically get confidence from that, but confidence came from the things you did in practice that week and maybe the week before, and maybe there's a day where you start beating that kid that's got arms twice the size as you. And sports is an easy analogy, but you bring that back to the classroom. That's not always the easiest. Maybe if you've been a B student and now you're like, I think I want to change my life and be an A student. And that's not always the easiest thing. So the things I teach, like getting rid of your negative mindset, getting rid of your excuses, getting rid of your limited mindset. And a limited mindset doesn't automatically give you an unlimited mindset, but it opens the door for continuous personal growth as another opposite image. Limited mindset, we're going to throw that out and we're going to add continuous personal growth. And as a teacher, that the continuous personal growth that opened it up for me to bring in a lot of subjects and stories that were helpful. But the things I teach become foundational, whether it's with the mindset or relationships or the self, and it leads to things like respect. It leads to things like, we talked a little bit about heart brain coherence. When you start getting in the zone as an athlete or as a student, that comes from being grateful and showing appreciation. What are the other words for that? Care and confidence are foundational to heart brain coherence, and that's where it starts getting into some of the quantum physics aspect of what I teach. And it starts making that foundational difference where you can start saying, all right, I can start being confident. I can start being consistent. I can start earning respect from the people around me. And that's really, those things are higher up the level. So what I teach is very foundational. It's a little like when a business asked me, can you teach sales to my salespeople? I said, yes, I can do that, but I'm going to teach them the foundational stuff first, because if you understand the foundation, and this foundational stuff is simple, when you see it, you go like, oh yeah, I've got some of that in me, but I could use a little more.
Mhm.
And that's where it comes from, getting where you need, getting that foundation built so you can build on top of it.
Mhm.
So making that strong, gives you that ability to go next level.
Yeah. And you even give the ability for people knowing themselves the way they do by the end. It's like, what are your numbers 11 and 12, you know?
Yep.
And I know one of the things that I had wrote down is just like, an underperformer is like staying quiet when you have something positive that you want to speak into somebody. My faith and God is a big part of me, and sometimes I just think other people need to hear it. And so, a high performer would be like, take the time to feed into that person. And it's certainly given me more focus on that and not being afraid and thinking they don't want to hear it. So it's certainly made a difference in my life. I could see the wheels turning with the students. And then as soon as we got done, the staff members that were in the room, they're like, our staff needs this. Like we need to feed this to our staff who can then feed this to all of our students. Before we get into just how schools can work with you and you can just describe a little bit of that, can you just tell me a little bit about like stress and then relationships, because in when we're working in schools, we have to work with a lot of people, and
Yep.
especially in school communicator roles, we're dealing with parents, we're dealing with staff, we're dealing
Yep.
with changing standards by the government, we're doing all of that. And so trying to control some of that stress, some of our relationships in the workplace setting, can you
Yep.
just kind of feed into that a little bit of how the higher performance generation can help with that?
Sure. Yeah, relationships become an important part. It's getting your own mindset corrected, or improved, might be a better word for that. Heading in that direction is a great thing. But then also you also have that connection with other people, whether it's teacher to student, whether it's student to student, or how about teacher to teacher, teacher to yourself, or student to themselves. The struggles that many of your students have. The struggles that many of you have, whether it's with your spouse. Say when I do a couples talk, all everybody I can't let couples sit next to each other because they all want to apply it to their spouse and not to themselves. But let's keep this the consciousness of this whole thing directed inwardly at ourselves, because if you want to reduce stress, there's a few things you can do that are just an absolute must. And one of them is creating from the future. So as you desire to perform higher in your classroom, in your business, in your life, look to the future. How would I say, look to the future and then bring it back to the present. Look to the future and bring it back to the now. Don't go back to the past. The past is a bit of a teacher, but it's a terrible master. There's a quote out there about that one. The past is a terrible master, but you can learn from it. Spend 10% of your time learning from the past, but spend 90% of your time really look into the future and where you want to go with your classroom, with your life, with your goals. And now take action. So what alleviates stress probably more than anything, possibly more than anything, is taking action. If you want to get healthier, start exercising. That's just it's foundational. If you want to get healthy, start eating better. There's just things you have to do to head in that correct direction. There's a bit of a risk with having this elation that, oh, I figured out what I need to do, and you have this aha moment, but then you don't do anything about it. So one of the other opposite images that I have in my system is you throw out little or no follow through, and sets goals and takes action. I always put those two things together. We've all set a goal and then haven't done a whole lot about it, I suspect. But you set goals and take action, and not just take action next week or tomorrow or next year, or let's wait till January 1st. Let's do something today. That's foundation. That word tomorrow kills more goals than anything. What can you do today to start heading in that direction of this goal that you have? And a goal is something in the future, or a vision that you have. What can you start rehearsing today to get you to that point where you want to take your life? So looking toward the future is a great create in the future and act in the now, and then taking action are two steps that you are must do steps in order to start alleviating stress. And if you're a teacher listening to this, you want to do that with your students, spend some time writing with them. I would have my kids flip their notebook over and start from the back of the notebook so they didn't have it in the middle of their notes and lose all this stuff. But in the back, they could write things down. And when you write things down, you get really clear with your thoughts. That's why we write. Because you can erase or you can cross it out and you can say that's not really what I want. So start taking action simply by writing it down. Your odds, you see different studies. I remember reading a study that you're 42% more likely to accomplish your goals if you write them down.
Mhm.
And it does make sense because you get really clear in your thoughts. But then also write down what action you're going to take with that goal to get started on that today. So there's just a couple things that you can do to start alleviating that stress in your life, and there's more. We got more for you too. So
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking down. I've got my goals. These are back from 2021. It's funny, but another
how
trick.
you doing on them?
I'm doing pretty good.
Good.
Yeah, definitely. But my big ones for personal side was, enjoy each day, strength in mind and spirit, and body, mind, body, and spirit, and then friendships. And so, but the one of the big ones we'd always did was we'd had a checkbox in
Yep.
front of the goal so that that's the take action part, right? And so that
I
can be
like that. That's
powerful.
an image. That's an image that you can imprint in your mind.
Yeah.
We're big on rehearsing your life and creating that, like I said, opposite imaging. So just having that checkbox. I'm a box checker too. I'm a list maker and a box checker like you. I'll go down. I'll go accomplish stuff and then I'll go write it on my list later just so I can check that box.
Right. There's lots of people like that. I know
Yeah.
one of these on here, which everybody on here can help me with. I want to get 500 listeners per episode, and right now I think I get a little over 300 listeners per episode, which is great. But
Sure.
I'd like to increase that number, so I'm still chasing that dream. But
Well, I can help you with that. I'm signing up for your webinar tonight.
oh
So,
yeah,
so what do you
absolutely,
at
yeah,
300? So now you're at 301.
yes,
I
that'll
can
be
help.
good. So how can, if people are listening to this, they're like, oh, you're in Amory, Wisconsin, but you work with schools all over or
Yep.
organizations. So how can schools work with you? Like what exact ways do you come in and help deliver your system?
Yeah, I'll use what I've worked with New Auburn as a start. Well, so to come in and work with a leadership team
Hmm.
and to spend time with my system, you get that core group of leaders started, and then we can branch out from there. I love working with class size groups, groups of 20, 25, and but I also love working with individuals.
Hmm.
So I got a handful of individual young people in my life that I've spent time coaching. A number of them, as Andrea mentioned, have taken this list and one kid I was working with down in Texas, he slapped it right on his mirror, uh, and in the morning, so he sees it. And what can I work on today? What can I do to strive to help others? What can I do for a positive mindset? What can I do with my goals? And he's got goals in athletics, in academics, and he's in the middle of a college search, things of that nature. There's a lot of different ways. I work with individuals, but when it comes to schools, I would love to take on an in-service. If you're looking for an in-service program, I'd love to help you with that. I love speaking on stage. I love working with high performers and soon to be high performers. So
Yeah.
it it's fun to change lives. It is one of those things. I talk a little bit about brain heart coherence. That's what it does for me. Striving to help others. I enjoy that piece, and it's something that is like I said, it's foundational, and it changes lives. It changes the culture of your can change the culture of your school, your classroom, and I benefited the most from it. I'll just tell you that. I can't tell you what it, all the little things that it did for my life.
Yeah.
Because who holds me accountable if I'm teaching this in my classroom?
Your
Who's going to
kids.
hold me accountable for being positive?
Yeah.
It's the kids.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing. It's not a
Right.
bad thing to be beholden to your kids because they see that. Now you're modeling that for them, and all of a sudden that elevated sense of of belonging in your classroom becomes a staple.
Yeah.
And
So, what's
and
the best way for people to stay connected to you if they're interested in an in-service or a leadership team, or maybe even that individual coaching? What would be the best way?
Yep. I've got a website under development. I also have 22 videos that are under development. They're filmed. They're in editing right now,
Okay.
which go through my 10 pillars. Plus, I have a special video for educators and one for coaches too. And so to reach out to me. Right now, my email, I will have a website coming out in the future here, but my email is Mark Oman. I'll spell it for you. It's MarkOman 4250 at gmail.com. One
Awesome.
more time, MarkOman 4250 at gmail.com.
Yeah.
And that's the email I'm gonna go with to get started. And when my videos come out, I've got a system for accessing those that I'm still getting worked out. And no need to mention it here until I get that finalized. But I've got some
Well,
neat stuff, and
I'm going to
I
push you, Mark, and maybe by the time this airs, it's going to be on there. So, guys, make sure
yeah,
to check out the show notes so that you can take a look at that. But you can certainly email Mark. Mark, thank you so much. I'm so
yeah,
excited for this to spread. I know that you're going to be able to help so many people, just like you've helped me and our organization, our school district. We're certainly looking to get you in with our staff.
yep.
This really truly does make a difference, and I'm excited to see where this goes. So thanks for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, there's a lot more to it, and it's simple when you see it. I know as a teacher, one of the things I looked for is something that didn't require a lot of prep.
Yeah,
I got enough to do. If you're a teacher listening, you've got enough to do. I don't have a workbook for you. I can write a workbook for you, but you don't need one. Your kids
no,
don't want one. We got some neat ideas, activities, and things like that that you can take to your classroom, and you can make a difference in the lives of your students as well as your own life.
yeah,
And if you're a business owner, listen to this too. I love talking to businesses. I've been an entrepreneur for 42 years, and it's in my blood. I love being a teacher. I love being an entrepreneur. And so as I let you go here, it's something I have a passion for. And as a teacher, this was my highest conviction as a teacher, to be able to change lives was this system.
yeah.
And thanks for having me on, Andrea. I
Yeah,
appreciate it so
awesome.
much.
Well, thank you guys for listening in. Definitely reach out to Mark. And in the meantime, keep telling those stories. Okay. Use your
Yeah.
confidence. Use some of these mindset things as you're telling the stories for the school districts because it really makes a difference. So we'll see you again next week. Bye bye,
Thanks,
Mark.
Andrea. Appreciate it.